I still can't believe what happened last week. I was out on one of my usual multi-day solo hikes, deep in the Pacific Northwest wilderness. The first few days were incredible. I saw a family of deer, an eagle soaring overhead, and even a black bear from a safe distance. The forest was alive, and I was just a quiet guest. I'd set up my camp for the third night by a small, gurgling creek. The air was getting crisp, and the sun was setting, painting the sky in these insane shades of orange and purple. I cooked my dinner, tidied up my site, and crawled into my tent, feeling completely at peace. I woke up just before dawn, not because of my alarm, but because of a sound. It was this tiny, soft, almost like a whimper. At first, I thought it was a raccoon or a fox, so I stayed still, listening. But the sound came again, closer this time, right outside my tent. It was followed by a faint rustling. My heart started pounding a little faster. You're always on alert out here, you know. I slowly unzipped my tent, peeking out, trying to be as quiet as possible. And that's when I saw it. Right next to my hiking boots, which I'd left just outside the tent flap, was this creature. It was small, maybe the size of a human toddler, and covered in thick, dark, brown fur. It was curled up in a tight ball, shivering slightly, and it was fast asleep. My brain just couldn't process what I was seeing. It looked like a tiny gorilla, but its face had these strangely human-like features. Its little hands were curled into fists, and one was resting right on the toe of my boot. I just stood there, frozen, for what felt like an eternity. Was Israel? Was I dreaming? My first instinct was to back away slowly, but something stopped me. It looked so vulnerable. It was just a baby. A baby what? I had no idea, but it was alone and cold. I looked around, scanning the dense trees and the thick underbrush. There was no sign of a mother, no tracks other than my own and a few deer prints. Nothing. Just an eerie silence. It was as if this little guy had just appeared out of thin air. Who left him there? And why right next to my boots? It was so specific, so deliberate. I couldn't just leave him. So, very carefully, I reached for the spare wool blanket I kept in my pack. I moved so slowly, trying not to make a single sound that would startle him. He stirred a little, letting out another soft whimper, and my heart just melted. I gently draped the blanket over his little body. He immediately snuggled into the warmth, letting out a soft, contented sigh. I just sat there, watching him sleep as the sun started to rise, illuminating the incredible scene before me. This was something out of a fairy tale. For the next few hours, I was a silent guardian. I made myself some coffee, but I didn't dare start a fire for breakfast, worried the smoke or the crackling would scare him. I just sat, sipping my cold coffee, watching him breathe. His fur was thick and matted with a few leaves and twigs. He had these big, innocent eyes, even when they were closed. I started thinking about all the legends, the stories my grandpa used to tell me about the wild men of the woods, the Sasquatch, Bigfoot. I'd always dismissed them as campfire tales, but looking at this little creature, I wasn't so sure anymore. As the morning wore on, he began to wake up. He stretched his tiny arms and legs, just like a human baby. Then, his eyes fluttered open. They were huge, dark, and incredibly intelligent. He looked right at me, and there was no fear, just curiosity. He sat up, the blanket falling into his lap, and tilted his head. I didn't move a muscle. I just looked back at him, trying to communicate with my expression that I wasn't a threat. He then did something that blew my mind. He reached out a tiny, furry hand toward me. I hesitated for only a second before slowly extending my own hand. His little fingers, surprisingly strong, wrapped around my index finger. His touch was warm. It wasn't the touch of a wild animal. It was trusting. We stayed like that for a few minutes, just connected. In that moment, all the questions who he was, where he came from, they all faded away. It was just this incredible, peaceful connection between two living beings in the heart of the wilderness. I felt this overwhelming sense of responsibility for him. I knew I couldn't keep him, and I certainly couldn't take him back to civilization. He belonged here. But where was his family? I broke off a piece of my energy bar and offered it to him. He sniffed it cautiously, then took a tiny bite, chewing it thoughtfully. He seemed to like it. While he was eating, I started carefully examining the area again, looking for any clue, any sign I might have missed in the pre-dawn light. And that's when I found it. About 20 yards from my camp, pressed into a patch of soft mud near the creek, was a footprint. And it was massive, easily twice the size of my own boot print. It was unmistakable. The classic shape you see in all those blurry photos and documentaries. A big footprint, and right next to it, a set of smaller prints, the same size as the little guy's feet. The story started to piece itself together. They must have been traveling together, and for some reason, the mother had to leave him. But why leave him with me? Was she watching me? Did she somehow know I wouldn't harm him? Maybe she was injured, or maybe something had scared her away, and leaving her baby in a place with a humanist source of potential warmth and safety was a last, desperate resort. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. The idea that a massive, intelligent creature was observing me, making a calculated decision about her child's safety, was both terrifying and she trusted me. Just as I was processing this, a sound echoed through the valley. It was a deep, resonant call. Not a bird, not a bear. It was a sound I'd never heard before. It was powerful, but it wasn't aggressive. It sounded mournful, like a mother calling for her child. The little guy in my camp heard it too. His head snapped up, his ears perked, and he let out a series of excited, high-pitched chirps in response. He looked from me to the direction of the sound, his eyes wide with anticipation. He started to toddle towards the edge of the clearing, looking back at me one last time. He gave a little wave, a gesture so human it took my breath away, and then he disappeared into the thick ferns. I stood there, completely stunned. I waited, listening. A few minutes later, I heard the call again, closer this time, followed by the happy chirps of the baby. Then, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps moving away, crashing through the undergrowth, until it was silent once more. They were reunited. I packed up my camp in a daze, my mind reeling. The wool blanket was still lying on the ground where he'd left it. I picked it up and held it. It felt strangely precious now. The hike back was a blur. The world seemed different, more magical, more mysterious. I never told anyone the full story. Who would believe me? They'd call me crazy or say I imagined it. But I know what I saw. I know the feeling of that tiny hand in mine. Sometimes, when I'm back in the city, surrounded by noise and concrete, I think about him. I wonder if he's grown, if he's safe with his mother, roaming those vast, ancient forests. That encounter changed me. It opened my eyes to the possibility that there are still great mysteries left in this world, wonders hiding just beyond the edge of our maps, and I was lucky enough to be a small part of one of them. I still have the blanket, and I'll never forget the baby Bigfoot who slept beside my boots. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever had an unexplainable experience in the wild, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more adventures. See you next time.